We're standing on the corner of North Palace and Franklin Street, where most people said that this was basically the start of the cuts. And right now we're standing in front of an area that used to be a service station. I really can't recall the name of the station, but as you can see, the structure is still here. But if you look to the left of the service station, there's a building towards the left down here that used to be a nightclub where people would go and entertain themselves or whatever they wanted to do. But this was the area coming from the south that actually started what we call part of the cuts, okay? And as we move forward going down Palace Street, going north, we can show you some more areas that's associated with the cuts. Now, the cuts was a community of predominantly black citizens doing segregation. This was a community where we had a lot of black entrepreneurs that had a good business. This was the only black business community in the city of Tyler. And on the cuts, we had everything that we needed to survive. It was here on the cuts in a small, condensed area. But this is where I grew up. I grew up on the cuts. So if you don't mind, we can walk through it. I can show you some of the interesting parts of what took place on the cuts. As we walk down here, TJ Austin has always been here. It's been a smaller building located a little bit more west. But right here in this area where you see the brick wall, there were several buildings here. In one building housed Ross Shoe Repair Shop, where we had a shoe repairman. And the other side of Mr. Ross was a dentist. And I think his name was Medlock. Mr. Medlock dentist's office was located on this side over here where you see the rock wall, okay? So that means we had our own shoe shop and our own dentist on this side right in this area here. If you take a picture at the house on the far right-hand side, that house belongs to the Corneys. B.C. Corney and his family lived there. Miss Mary still lives there in that house. Charles, who was one of the sons, is a classmate of mine. I think he lives there with his sister at certain times. But that house has been there on the cut ever since I can remember, and is still in good shape. Keep in mind that I grew up on the cuts, but there were people that came along before me that could probably relate more history about the cuts, but I can only tell you the part that I lived through, and that's been over 50 years ago, okay? So we'll leave it at that.
What is your frame here?
I say anybody that grew up in the Tyler area, regardless of where they live, it's probably, I'd say, the early 40s to mid-70s.
Okay.
Yeah. They would probably remember a little bit about the cuts, if not more than what I know about the cuts. And different people spell it different ways. Some people spell it C-U-T, and I've seen C-U-T-T and apostrophe S, but to me it's still the cuts regardless of how you spell it, okay? And the original word of the cut, I don't know where it came from. I've got different stories of how it got the name. It was here before I got here, but somebody told me it was because of the intersection right in this area right here. We have an intersection of Palace Street, Vance Street, and Texas College Road. These are three intersections that basically intersect one another, and some people said they call it the cuts because these three sections cut across each other. And I don't know if that's true or not, and I've heard other stories of the reason why it's called the cuts, okay? On the corner here, if you look over here to this building, the Lord's building here, at one time, this building housed a nightclub, another nightclub. Also in the area, maybe not this building, but a building beyond that, it was a barber shop, Harvey's Barber Shop, and then there was Johnny Love's Beauty Shop. So we had a barber shop and a beauty shop on this corner, on that side of the street, okay? And a nightclub. If we move on across this way, going on this side of the crossover, the building you see that I'm walking towards now, this was probably one of the famous and most utilized building on the cut. And it was called the Green Top Cafe, and we nicknamed it Green Top. It was owned by Mr. Robert, we call him Houseman. I forget his last name. But anyway, it's the Green Top Cafe. This was a restaurant. Houseman, and that's what we call him, Houseman, sold hamburgers, hot dogs, little things that we needed in the community to keep us going. One of the things about the Green Top that's so memorable about a lot of people is the slang, the way we ordered food. Basically, Mr. Houseman sold hamburgers, hot dogs, and chili loaves. Now, for those of you who don't know what a chili loaf is, a chili loaf was uncut bread where he would take and cut it and take the centerpiece out of the bread, load the centerpiece up with chili, and then put the centerpiece back in the bread. And that was called a chili loaf. You could get them anywhere from 25 cents on up. And what you would order with your chili loaf was a wine. Now, wine was a grape soda pop put out by Barks, and that's what we call a wine. And for dessert, we had a wagon wheel. A wagon wheel was a jack cookie about 2 inches in diameter, paid about a couple of pennies for that. So you could come out to school or during school lunch hours and bring 75 cents and get a good meal of a chili loaf, a wine, and a wagon wheel right here at Houseman's. And if you notice, the building is still here and the top is still green. And I don't know who owns it right now, but whoever owns it reserved it for history. And it's a part of our history that anybody that grew up in North Tyler that came on the cut can tell you about the activities and what fun we had here at the Green Top Cafe, ran and owned by Houseman. Okay? If you can get a shot right here on this corner, and I don't know if we might be in the shade now. On the corner used to be a tall building, and the double-story building was a North Tyler YMCA. The North Tyler YMCA had in it everything else any other YMCA had in it. We had a legal-sized basketball court. Hey now, we had a couple of rooms where we played table tennis, we played dominoes, and things of that nature. But this was the Y. It was upstairs. The upstairs part was the office part and business part. But to my knowledge, it was probably the first YMCA in North Tyler, and we call it the Y, the North Tyler Y. Okay. We used to, after school, this is where we would hang out, the North Tyler Y. Across the street here, if you look to my far east, you'll see one of the churches that's still here, and that is the Greater St. Mary Baptist Church. It was smaller than that. They remodeled it over the period of years, but this church has been on the cut ever since I can remember. And like I say, that's been quite a time. But if you see the awning where the cars are parked, or where the shed is, they didn't have that. There used to be another, I call them fast food restaurants now, but it's just a cafe called the Gizmo. The Gizmo sold the same thing that Houseman sold. There was hamburgers, hot dogs, french fries, etc. The difference is, at the Gizmo, you had to order from the window. We didn't have any place you could go in and sit down, so everything at the Gizmo was takeout. When you come to Houseman, you could actually sit down at a table and eat your food. But the Gizmos was owned by Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They still have adult children that still live in the area. They live right here, mostly around this area, but they're still here. And that's Brenda and Janice Johnson, but they're married, but they're still a part of Tyler and part of the Cuts, in my opinion. Okay? There's a lot here in this area that people can be surprised about, that, you know, that's been a secret to people that live in Tyler, and that is this small area that had a lot of black entrepreneurs. That's been a secret in Tyler for a long time. To the other side, I would say to South Tyler. Okay, right here, as you see, used to be Harris Grocery Store, and at the top of it you will see like housing. Well, the Harris lived on top of the grocery store. The grocery store was you see the open space under the bottom. So therefore, we had 2 restaurants, a dentist, a shoe repair, 2 clubs, and now I'm showing you a grocery store. So that's where we got all our goods and services that we needed as far as food, was Harris Grocery Store. And the grocery store is at the bottom, and they house themselves at the top, okay? And if you can get a picture of that sign, it says Murty's Beauty Salon. Well, next door here was another beauty salon owned by Miss Murty Whitaker. Okay? Next door to the beauty salon was 5 Point Barbershop. Oh, it's 5 Point Barbershop. And that structure is still here. Hey, there's Miss Mary Corney right there. If you notice, the Murty's Beauty Salon is right here, and next door in this area used to be 5 Point Barbershop. Miss Murty Whitaker was the only owner of the beauty salon. Mr. Cleotha Whitaker and his brothers were the owner of the barbershop. And it was called 5 Point. And why they call it 5 Point, I don't know. I know that there was 3 brothers that was working out here at one time, 2 barbers, and one of the brothers was a shoe shine guy. But this is where they had, I guess, the dual business of a barber and beauty shop right here, okay? And next door here was apartment rooms where people, I guess, I would call it just a mini hotel, where they had rooms in the back where people would come and room either overnight or during the week or whatever. But that's what that turned out to be, a little hotel. And all of this was part of the barber and beauty shop business. Now, we have a historical marker that the city of Tyler put up recognizing Young's Pharmacy. This is Young's Pharmacy, the only black pharmacist in Tyler at that particular time where we could come. It was a regular drugstore, just like any other drugstore, where people could come and get their prescriptions refilled. More than that, Young's Pharmacy was a fountain area where you could go sit down from the old fountain and get ice cream, floats, shakes, and things of that nature. So not only did we come and get our medicine and drugs, this is where we came and got soda pop. You know, you name it, Dr. Young had it. And we have a historical marker over here that tells you a little bit about, watch the bus, tells us a little bit about Young's Pharmacy, okay? Now, I think I was told that one of Dr. Young's relatives bought the building and he keeps it up, and he's turning it into a small cafe where people can come and get lunch from the cafe here. But I heard there was one of Dr. Young's relatives that still got the building, and it looks about the same from the outside. That was a barbecue place where, you know, a guy had pit barbecue, and you can see the brick pit, which they don't build them like that anymore, old brick pits, but it was a barbecue spot. See right there, old brick pit. And you could go sit down and order some barbecue and dine on some good, fine hickory smoked barbecue. Yeah. Now, early on, I told you about the YMCA being here, right? It was somewhere in this area. Also, on this same side of the street where the YMCA used to be a laundromat, you know, regular wash and dry, etc., etc. It was owned by a real estate guy by the name, I think, L.B. Brown at that particular time. Well, what happened, he had so much vandalism and storing of his property, he closed the laundromat down for whatever reason, but I was told that. Well, the city of Tyler decided to, for whatever reason, I don't know whether they had complaints from citizens in the area or whatever, they decided to put a sub-stop police station over here. Just imagine a sub-police station in the heart of the cuts. It was kind of strange, but it happened. Now, I laugh because it was real funny to me to put a station over here in our community, you know, because everything was going pretty good. Anyway, long and short of it, the police substation might have lasted a year. And what would happen, and you have to remember, I was a young teenager, mischievous like a lot of them. We used to come out, and basically they would have 3 or 4 here. What we would do in order to get their attention, we would go to the nearest telephone booth and call in something. Somebody breaking in a house or somebody's fighting. They would shut the door and run to that phone call. Well, the rest of us would come in and we'd vandalize the police station. We'd break into it, steal the telephones or mess up the typewriters. And I'm saying that because, you know, they can't put me in jail for it now because statute of limitations ran out. But we were very mischievous with the police department because we didn't want them in our neighborhood, okay? But they were here, stayed here maybe a year, and they made a decision it was not worth it and was not that much crime, as people thought it was, so the police substation moved out. But I just want to give you a little history that this was the first substation of the police department in Tyler, Texas. Okay? Now, right along in here, and you can still see the driveway, there was an auto parts store. So we're looking at all the different businesses now. There was an auto parts store owned by Krantz Roy. We call him Chokum. He had an auto parts store where this first trash can is, and around on the side, he had the garage. So if you bought parts from him, then if you want them put on real quick, he had a garage where he had people that would install, small parts like batteries, starters, alternators, clutches of that different nature. So this was where the garage was. It was called North Tyler Auto Parts, okay? As we move right along, next door to him was another restaurant. It didn't last too long. I don't know what happened, but it was owned by a young man that came out of Austin, and he opened up a chicken house where his specialty was garlic fried chicken, French fries, etc. He didn't last too long for whatever reason, but anyway, it was there for us when we wanted to use it and eat fried chicken, okay? The next building, or the next opening you would see was Gray's Cleaners. So we had a cleaners on the cut, which was the last door, and that was called Gray's Cleaners. Now, different organizations use this building. The Wild Bunch Motorcycle Club is here right now, along with some others. But right now, we had Gray's Cleaners on this end, okay? So when you move on down, next to Gray's Cleaners was the Harlem Theater. Might not look like enough room, but it was upstairs about 3 stories. And it was called the Harlem. It was actually a theater where we could come and watch different movies if we wanted to. It was also a place where named stars in the black community would come and perform live. I couldn't attend because of my age, but I can recall when Bobby Blue Bland came to Tyler, James Brown, Little Milton, they all performed, most of them here at the Harlem Theater. Okay? Years later on, whatever happened, the theater went away, and the owners made a skating rink out of it. So after the theater left, the same building housed a skating rink. So we had all of that in this 3 or 4 block area. Remember, we had grocery stores, barber shops, cleaners, auto mechanics, theater, okay? This house right here has been on the corner ever since I've been here, and it was owned originally by the Washingtons. I don't know the man's name, but Mr. and Mrs. Washington, I think they had 4 kids or 3 kids, and one of them, Sherry Ann, was my classmate, and she lived here on the cuts. And like I said, this house has been here for years. What you see here,
make you look good, don't worry.
This used to be, I think it was Lewis Mobile Station. You remember the old flying horse, the red and white mobile flying horse? That was the signal, and this was Lewis Mobile Service Station right here on this corner. So this makes our second station in the area, and this was owned by Mr. Lewis, okay? So this is it, and the building's still here. These guys use it for a detail shop. But you can see where it used to be a full service station right here. He done oil and filter changes, whatever people needed to be done in the area, Mr. Lewis would take care of them, okay? Okay. Now, if you turn to the right, I want to show you the second church on the cuts, and that's Houston Temple. Elder Houston that is the pastor of the Houston Temple Church, I think off on Walton Drive. This is his father's church. So Elder Houston and them, they're lifelong residents of Smith County, but it's been remodeled, but the church is still part of the cuts. It's still part of our history. So that includes 2 churches, okay? Now, there's another church on further down. You can't see it from here. Hey, all right, but see the red building there? Watch the car. The big building that's standing up, that's another church. That's Miles Chapel, CME Church. It's always been there. So that gives us 3 churches in the general area. And I don't want to forget our third service station, which is about 2 blocks from here on the corner of the MLK and Palace Street. It was owned by Mr. Claiborne. It was then a Gulf station. I don't know if people remember. It was called Gulf, but it was a Gulf station, and Mr. Claiborne owned that. So if you look at it, we had 3 service stations in the neighborhood. One here, one at the corner of MLK and North Palace, and one on the corner of North Palace and Franklin Street. So that comprised of the 3 major service stations in the area. Okay? So that's about as far as we can go as far as the north is concerned. But anything from Franklin Street to MLK was considered part of the cuts. Okay? Okay? Can't see those tires.
What are some of your favorite memories here?
Ooh. Favorite memories?
Yeah.
Man, I've got so many. I guess the favorite memory is just being able to be free. We were free to walk the streets and do what we want to do and socialize without any interference of violence or vandalism. And I say that for a reason, because I grew up in a society where I was not allowed to cross a certain part of the track. You follow me? And I'm serious about it. And it stays in my mind right today that I lived in a community, and it's not my community's fault. It is the country's fault that I lived in a community where if I crossed a certain line, my livelihood could be in danger. And by me being so hard-headed, I crossed those lines a lot of times just to see if I was going to be in danger. So my favorite memory would be living in an area where I could walk the streets at night, any time of night, because I wasn't allowed to stay out too late at night. But I could walk the streets at night. I had friends that knew me and I knew them. I could go anywhere and sit down and eat if I wanted to. And those are my fondest memories of just being a part of this community. There was nothing that we needed on the other side of town for the most part because it was right here. It was very seldom that I went downtown, and a lot of people don't realize that downtown is in North Tower, basically, if you look at the lines. But we didn't go downtown. In fact, I didn't unless my parents came by and said, we're going to go downtown and do that. We didn't have a car, so we had to walk. But it was very seldom that I went past, I would say, Queen Street, going north, going south. I spent all of my young life and adults on the cut. When I got out of school, my mother worked at private home. My daddy worked at Tyler Pipe. So when I got out of school sometime at 3 o'clock, nobody was home. I would go home and get my homework, and I'd spend the rest of my time on the cuts until I think my mom came in. So I grew up on the cuts with the people in the barbershops and the beauty shops that took care of us. If we were doing anything wrong or something started or happening out on the streets, they would pull off their apron, come out, and stop it. So it was just, in my opinion, a nice place to live. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some guys that done some mischievous things, like breaking in, and you have it every day, no matter what community you live in, but it wasn't that bad to where you couldn't feel comfortable walking around the streets on the cut. So it was just a part of my life that I'll never forget, and I remember that, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being a product on the cut, and that's the reason why I take the position of being on city councilman in this Northwest District, because I don't think anybody that's been on the council, and let me take that back. I think that being on the council has given me a better perspective of where I came from, because I know my district. A lot of the people, the elderly people that were in my district, most of them are passed on, but the ones that are still here, I still remember them, I still respect them. So, as being a councilman for the Northwest District, I'm proud of that. And I will continue to try to do everything for my district that's humanly possible to do based on a lot of issues. It takes money to do a whole lot of things. But we still have things in my district that's like it. We don't have enough businesses in our district. Minority-owned business is one thing. And we live in a grocery store desert. We don't have a major grocery store in our district. And that's one thing I think we as the citizens all over need to look at. It's what's in the North Tyler area that we can expand on, because when North Tyler grows, Tyler grows. We shouldn't be the separate Tyler anymore. Tyler is one Tyler, in my opinion. So when one district suffers, the entire community suffers. So my goal and objective is to make North Tyler a part of Tyler and not be two different Tylers. I've talked to people that's come in from other states and other places, and they tell me, Ed, the first thing I noticed about Tyler is two different Tylers. And for the most part, they're right. And we're trying to change that image. The city council and the mayor and everybody, our goal is to change that image, to say that we're one Tyler, and that's the way it should be. In this day and age, we should have one community where we can all work and do things together. And I'm proud of Tyler. I'm especially proud of North Tyler and the Cuts. That is the conclusion of our tour of the Cuts. It was an amazing time in my life. I'm very proud of my black heritage. I'm very proud of what took place in this particular area. And I think it's something that young people need to come out and look at so they can learn and grow from. Because our history, in the most part, would dictate our future. And this was a place where I grew up, and a lot of more people, and we learned to respect one another, treat one another as we want to be treated. And that is something that will stay with me the rest of my life, is because I lived in a small community, such as Tyler, Texas, on the north side, and I was able to participate in a lot of things that went on in this particular area. I grew up in this area. My mother and father worked all the time, so you've heard the old saying about it takes a village to raise a child. This was my village, and I was raised by each and every adult that owned a business in this particular area, and I'm very proud of that. If there's anything else you want to know about the Cuts, you can see me or somebody else that grew up in this area. Thank you. Appreciate you. Have a good day.